Incredible rescue, Cowboy saves. Apache from drowning. Chief's shocking words changed everything. The sun hung low over the Arizona landscape, casting long shadows as Jake rode his horse through the rugged terrain, sweat glistening on his brow. He was tired. The day had been long, but his beloved daughter Lily awaited his return at the ranch. She was his world, the light in his otherwise sleep-deprived life. As he rounded a bend, the roar of the swollen river caught his attention, a violent reminder of the season's heavy rains. Suddenly, he spotted a figure in distress, a young Apache man thrashing in the powerful current, desperation clear in his eyes. Fear clenched around Jake's gut, a tight band of anxiety and urgency. He didn't think. He dove in, the cold water shocking his system, but he fought against it, grappling towards the flailing body. The current tugged at him, but with every stroke, the cries of the drowning man spurred him on. Moments later, Jake pulled a hoe to the muddy bank, gasping for breath, but both relief and an unfamiliar tension curled in his gut. He had saved a life, yet the collision of their worlds hung heavy in the air, crackling with the weight of unspoken history. As Aho clutched a branch, catching his breath, Jake's mind raced. What if his boss found out? Would they see this as betrayal? The ranch was all he had, the only legacy he could leave for Lily. Days passed since that fateful rescue, and Aho recuperated in Jake's humble home. A fragile bond formed between them amid the rough walls and dusty floorboards. Jake would recount stories of his family, the hardships they faced while carving a life from the unforgiving desert. In retelling, he noticed the hum of pride mixed with pain within Aho's eyes as he spoke of his people's struggles. Poverty, marginalization, it was an aching contrast to Jake's own trials. Now, overwhelming guilt clawed at Jake's heart. What had he done? Had he opened a door to something larger than himself? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A knock at the door startled Jake one evening, and in walked his former boss Hank, a man whose eyes gleamed with opportunistic greed. I hear you've been cozying up with the Apache. Heard he's got something of considerable value, Hank sneered. Tension crackled in the air, raising the hairs on Jake's arms. In that moment, he could feel the fragile threads of loyalty to his heritage and his daughter's future fraying beneath the pressure. The weight of Aho's land deed hung like a ghost in the room, a tangible symbol of hope, but one that echoed with centuries of pain and conflict. Where did his loyalties lie? Just as Jake began to wrestle with his turmoil, an unexpected visitor arrived. A proud Apache chief, a man with weathered wisdom etched into the lines of his face. His words, laced with history and burdens, blasted through Jake's heart, leaving him reeling. He revealed a connection between their ancestors that spun an intricate web of family and obligation. The revelation set off tremors deep within Jake, forcing him to reassess everything he thought he knew about loyalty, himself, and what it meant to protect one's family. With his heart hammering against his ribs and a sense of destiny closing in on him, Jake stood at the precipice, his mind spiraling. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting an amber glow that mirrored his turbulent thoughts. Uncertainty gripped him tightly. Could he bridge the gap that had long divided their cultures? Would he dare to confront the system that sought to keep them apart? As the shadows lengthened, doubt mixed with a sense of burgeoning responsibility, leaving Jake at a crossroads that could rewrite history, both his own and Aho's. And as the weight of his choices loomed larger, Jake felt the ground beneath him shift, setting the stage for a battle far more profound than he could ever have imagined. The days that followed were suffused with a heavy tension. Jake found himself wrestling with thoughts that spiraled like the dust devils that danced across the arid landscape. Each morning, he'd awaken to the haunting memory of the Apache chief's revelation. "You share blood with the land," the chief had said, his voice resonating with an ancient authority. Jake tossed and turned through restless nights, grappling with his newfound reality, a reality that threatened to unravel the very fabric of his life. In the morning light, the ranch felt different, as if the walls had ears to listen to his anxiety. The chores he'd performed mindlessly now bore the weight of expectation. He could feel the pulse of the land beneath him, the stories wrapped in every crevice and shadow. His connection to it had deepened, transforming from mere survival to an intricate tapestry of history and shared suffering. As he carried out his daily tasks, each movement became imbued with purpose. He painted the barn with the vibrancy of a man who had reclaimed his role, undeterred by the doubts that lingered like the remnants of a fading storm. The paintbrush felt like an extension of himself, sweeping strokes that articulated a vision where connection and history converged. Lily watched him, her innocent eyes questioning his frequent absences and pensive demeanor. The laughter that used to echo through the ranch now struggled to find its way, caught beneath the weight of Jake's strife. He realized too late that she was perceptive, she was attuned to his inner turbulence. One afternoon, as he calmly painted, she curled up beside him, the sun casting a golden hue across her blonde hair. "Daddy, why do you look sad?" Her small voice pierced through his distraction. He hesitated, unsure of how to untangle the complexities swirling in his mind so they could fit into a child's understanding. "I'm not sad, sweetheart. I'm just thinking," he replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. She wrinkled her nose, scrutinizing him with unabashed honesty. "You're only sad when you think too much. Maybe you should think less," she said with profound simplicity, sealing his heart with the unintentional wisdom of a child. In that moment, his internal conflict simmered down. Perhaps confronting his truth didn't require all the answers right away. Instead, he needed to focus on meaningful actions. It was time to meet Aho's gaze as an equal, to step beyond the cultural chasm between them, and to understand the weight of Aho's world. Eliminating the noise around him, Jake decided to visit Aho, a decision that echoed the self-assurance he felt growing within. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Jake rode towards Aho's recuperating camp, where the river's edge whispered stories from ages past. He had questions that burned like the desert sun regarding loyalty, obligation, and their shared ancestry. He felt the tension tighten in his chest, each beat a reminder of the stakes involved, a tether to his daughter's future. Arriving at the bank, Jake found Aho sitting near the water. His eyes met Aho's, and a silent understanding passed between them that they were both seekers in a landscape fraught with uncertainty. "We need to talk," Jake called, his voice steady, laced with a newfound determination. As Aho turned to face him, the gravity of the moment thickened the air between them. Jake realized this was not just an opportunity to forge a connection. This was the moment to confront what had been hidden beneath their histories. As they began exchanging words, the river rumbled behind them, ready to drown out the old narratives that had shaped their lives. In that sacred space, Jake felt like a bridge being built, a vessel of change tethering two worlds together. The timbre of their voices rose above the rushing water, but the weight of what lay ahead pressed down on him. With every word exchanged, he felt the power to challenge the status quo within himself growing stronger. But just as the discussion found its footing and mutual understanding blossomed, a distant sound shattered the tranquility. A group of men, rough and reckless, appeared on the horizon, riding out with purpose, their intentions as cloudy as the gathering storm. Jake's heart sank. The moment of truth was about to collide with chaos. The air trembled around them as he prepared to face not just the men approaching, but everything they represented, their legacies, struggles, and the fate of both Aho's and his own future. Jake took a deep breath, feeling the earth beneath his boots, grounding him against the approaching storm. The men on horseback were like dark shadows against the sun, their presence an echo of the conflict that had simmered quietly for too long. With Aho silently assessing the situation alongside him, Jake felt the weight of tradition and history pressing down like a heavy yoke. This was no longer just about their individual animosities or misunderstandings. It was about legacy and survival. The group neared, their features becoming more distinct, revealing hardened expressions carved from years of strife. Their eyes flickered with disdain as they landed on the two men standing by the water's edge. Jake's heart raced. Instinctively he clenched his fists, preparing for whatever words or actions might come from this confrontation. He was not merely an outsider now. He carried the essence of the land and its history within him, and it surged with every heartbeat. "Look who we have here," one of the men called out, a smirk curling at the corners of his mouth. "The white man thinks he can play doctor to our people now?" Jake sensed Aho tense beside him, and he turned, their eyes locking in a moment of shared understanding. Neither could afford to show fear. "I'm here to talk, not to fight," Jake asserted, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. This was his moment to take a stand, not just for himself but also for Aho, for the stories woven into their connection. The leader of the group laughed derisively, spurring his horse closer. "Talk? About what? Your bloodline means nothing here. You're just a trespasser." The words stung, but the truth of what they represented ignited Jake's resolve. He remembered the Apache chief's words. "You share blood with the land." That course through him now more than ever felt like a lifeline. "I'm not here to take anything from you," he replied, modulating his tone. "I'm here to understand, to find common ground. Our histories are intertwined more than any of us realize." Silence hung thick in the air as the men exchanged glances, uncertainty flickering across their expressions. Aho moved slightly, leaning into Jake's words, a calculated act that spoke of solidarity. "You presume to know my people?" the leader said. "You think your understanding can repair generations of hurt?" "We don't have to repair everything all at once," Jake countered, grounding his feet firmly in the dirt. "But we can create something new. This conflict doesn't have to define our future. That's worth talking about." The leader scoffed but gave a subtle nod to the men behind him, who shifted uneasily, perhaps reconsidering their hasty judgment. Jake grasped this flicker of potential. It sparked something within him, a glimmer of hope amid the rising tide of tension. "Let's not forget, I have a daughter who deserves a chance to grow in a world free of fear and division." Jake's voice heightened, pinning the leader with an unwavering gaze. "If we can't forge a connection, we lay waste to every legacy we claim to uphold." The weight of his argument hung in the air, palpable and unyielding. The leader shifted in his saddle, visibly wrestling with Jake's words. But just as a schism threatened to form, another voice cut through the charged air, a low, ominous growl. "The threat isn't just from your past," another man warned, his eyes darting to the tree line. "We're not alone." A sudden rustling echoed from the woods. A flash of movement caught Jake's eye, sending adrenaline coursing through him. A realization surged in his chest. Whatever challenge lay ahead, facing it would not only test their resolve, but might reveal unexpected strengths hidden within. As the menace crested up, their discussion shifted from rhetoric to survival. The men now were sharpened to a point of fatalistic clarity, their survival instincts kicking in, jostling with the ghosts of old grievances. Jake looked quickly at Aho. They barely needed words to understand. They were in this together, at the nexus of change. With danger closing in, Jake quickened his pulse, feeling a fierce, reckless surge of adrenaline. Perhaps this chaos was the very catalyst he needed to bridge their histories after all. A reckoning born of conflict. The stakes were being raised. As the tension boiled over, Jake lifted his chin, steeling himself for the next phase and understanding that courage could manifest in unexpected ways. Just as he prepared for the oncoming storm, the ground shook beneath them, heralding a reckoning they could not avoid. The moment had arrived, for choices to be made, bonds to be forged, and truths to be uncovered. Would he rise to meet this challenge and emerge victorious? Or would the weight of legacy come crashing down like the tempest roaring to life around them? Only time would tell, as the battle for their intertwined destinies loomed ever closer. Jake instinctively took a step closer to Aho, their presence forming an unspoken alliance against the impending threat. The low growl from the tree line was a warning that ushered in a change of atmosphere. Gone was the tension of argument. Now it was a palpable anticipation of conflict. His mind raced through scenarios, switching from strategizing how to mediate to how to survive. "Stay alert," Aho whispered, eyes narrowing toward the shadows. The flicker of uncertainty in Aho's usually steadfast demeanor worried Jake. They both understood that survival was not just physical, it was a battle for their ideals and identities. As the rustling intensified, Jake grasped the weight of the moment again. This was more than just the stirrings of hostility. They were on the brink of a showdown that could shatter fragile alliances before they even had a chance to form. Suddenly, a figure burst forth from the underbrush, and Jake's tension spiked. A lone man, tall and wiry with sudden agility, leapt forward into the clearing. There was a flash of recognition. It was an old acquaintance of Jake, Jared, a self-proclaimed bounty hunter known for playing both sides. He had not been trusted, even when he was welcomed. "What are you doing here?" Jake demanded, heart racing in sync with the deepening shadows around them. Jared paused, scanning the tension that gripped the air. "Looks like a party's about to start," he drawled, eyes gleaming with mercenary delight. "But I'm not here for the entertainment." The leader of the men on horseback took a step forward, eyes flashing. "Do you mean to make this worse, outsider?" He dismissed Jared with a scoff. "No," Jared replied sharply, taking a nonchalant step back, deferring to their escalating conflict. "I just came to warn you, the true threat is hunting in these woods. A storm is brewing, but it's not just the weather." Jake felt the weight of Jared's words settle heavily in the pit of his stomach. A flood of realization washed over him. Whatever they faced today, be it prejudice, misunderstanding, or physical danger, none would compare to what lay hidden in the darkness. Turning to Aho, Jake sought solidarity in those troubled eyes. "What do we do?" he asked, and before Aho could respond, the leader waved a hand, silencing the murmurs around them. "The white man and his kind wish nothing but to control, yet here you stand." The leader's gaze bore into Jake, as if searching for a fault line in his resolve. "What will you choose? Stand with us, or unleash these outside forces?" A knot twisted in Jake's stomach. The question echoed the very essence of who he was, and the continuous battle between ancestry and choice. Everything in him fought against seeing the world in black and white. Today, he had to confront that nebulous realm of alliances. "Together, we can face whatever comes," Jake finally said, lifting his chin, each word tinged with practicality and acceptance, even if they felt like an act of defiance. He knew he was risking their credibility and safety, but something seemed more vital than life itself in that moment. In that fragile silence, a rustling emerged from the surrounding woods, no longer a mere warning but an assertive prelude to conflict. Jake's resolve hardened. He had chosen. He would forge a path with Aho amidst uncertainty to tackle the external threat and the internal struggle of identity. But just as they prepared to stand united against whatever would emerge, the ground shook violently again. The uncertainty became tangible. A reckoning was arriving that would change not just perceptions, but destinies. As shadows danced dangerously close, Jake stood resolute, recognizing this pivotal moment not just as a test of survival, but also as an opportunity for transformation. The true nature of their encounter, and all it would unearth, was about to come forth. Would he embrace the chaos and claim his place among those who mattered most, or would he falter under the weight of legacy? With danger looming closer, he braced himself for the inevitable confrontation, one that could shatter or solidify his journey. The ground trembled beneath Jake's feet, a reverberation that echoed the tumult of emotions swirling within him. Every heartbeat sounded like a drum roll to the impending chaos, urging him to solidify his resolve. The shadows felt alive, shifting closer, almost taunting him with the weight of history he had yet to fully understand. Aho's eyes were fierce, a fiery determination igniting in his gaze. "We must prepare for what lies ahead. Trust is as critical a weapon as any blade," he murmured, taking a step back only to scan their surroundings with growing apprehension. Jake nodded, the urgency igniting something deep within him. This wasn't merely about survival. This was about standing firm against the unknown and the marginalization that had long plagued both his heritage and Aho's. He could feel the internal fissures of his identity threatening to shatter into discord. While the tension escalated, Jake's mind shifted gears, filtering out the approaching shadows in an effort to conjure a plan. His encounters with Jared had taught him that knowledge was power. Jared's warning flickered within his thoughts. The true threat is hunting in these woods. He needed to harness that understanding. "Do you know what we're up against?" Jake pressed, turning back to Jared, who stood by with an arrogant air to his body language that belied the gravity of the situation. "If this is just a warning from you, then it's not enough. We have to know what we're fighting." Jared rolled his eyes, yet the tension had crept into his demeanor. It was a rare moment of gravity where he reconsidered the stakes of the conflict. "I wouldn't be here if I didn't think this could get ugly real fast." A low rumble resonated from the tree line, and instinctively, Jake took a cautious step forward. "We need to gather intel. This isn't just about brute force. We need strategy." Aho, sensing the threshold of war, shifted into action. We gather those who are reliable and prepare defenses. This isn't just our fight, it's about reshaping perceptions. Jake's heart raced at the partnership forming. Each shared glance spoke of resilience against the oppressive history that bound them. "Can you trust the others?" Aho asked, his voice low as the anxiety in his posture revealed the internal struggle to align their entities against the external threat. "I can't control their hearts, but I can control my actions," Jake asserted, a newfound clarity settling in. It wasn't just about race or alliances anymore. It was about perceiving humanity multidimensionally, harnessing the dichotomy of his background, and experiencing unity in that realization. The leader of the horsemen shifted uneasily, their demeanor betraying concern about Jake's eloquent rise from uncertainty. Jake felt the shifting tides around him, the fragility of trust beginning to weave through their ranks. "If they can see beyond color lines, we have a chance." A low, furious howl erupted from the foliage, a clarion call to chaos. Jake's breath hitched in his throat as he scanned the trees, adrenaline welding determination to his senses. The moment had come to channel everything he had learned into a course of action, something beyond survival. In that moment, a flicker of understanding ignited in Jake. He had underestimated the latent power that lay within the wisdom of heritage and his newfound resolve against adversity. He could rise up, not just for himself, but for the cultural tapestry joining him to Aho and others around him. The shadows in the woods were no longer just threats. They could be transformed into lessons. As they set off to fortify their defenses, Jake understood his metamorphosis wasn't complete. The battle loomed, not only against the shadows threatening them, but also against the misconceptions and fears woven through generations. With every step closer to the unknown, he recognized the complexities of personal and cultural identity deepening and evolving within him. In a single heartbeat, the storm was here, treacherous but filled with potential. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Aho prompted, side-eyeing Jake, searching for reassurance. "More than ever," Jake breathed, allowing the moment to fuel the flames of a new journey that would define not merely survival, but a reclamation of identity and purpose. As the ground shook again, threatening to swallow them whole, Jake whispered a promise to himself. He would emerge not just as a survivor, but as a challenger of chaos, an architect of change. Behind him, shadows shifted, heralding his next confrontation, and he would stand prepared. The call of the wild grew nearer, and with it, the haunting question lingered. What would rise from the depths of fear? The tension in the air was palpable as Jake and Aho gathered their makeshift team, each member weighed down by the gravity of the moment. They moved with urgency, yet Jake couldn't help but feel the strain of uncertainty simmering beneath their determined exterior. The ground vibrated beneath their feet, each shudder an echo of the impending confrontation looming in the heart of the woods. Jake's mind raced as he considered the array of personalities before him. He had known many of them as fellow warriors. Their strengths had always been banked on trust, but now they were united by necessity. Every face reflected either fear or resolve. Among them, Jared's scoffing demeanor fueled a silent rebellion against Jake's evolving confidence. "Trust doesn't come forward when it's convenient," Jake found himself murmuring, more to himself than anyone else. He realized that trust was the foundation of every alliance, but convincing these individuals demanded an authenticity he was still cultivating. "Tell them about what we've seen," Aho urged, a firm glance at Jake reinforcing the need for unity. The crowd shifted as Jake took a deep breath, grounding himself in the moment. "We're not just fighting shadows, we're dismantling what they represent," he stated, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "If we stand together, reshape our perceptions of one another, we hold the potential to redefine this moment." A ripple of uncertainty traveled through the ranks. People exchanged glances, weighing Jake's newfound conviction against their ingrained fears, a hesitation that stung as a reminder of the divisions they each carried. "What if they don't see us as allies?" a voice rang out, mirroring Jake's own internal doubt. Jake's heart sank, but he noted the collective tension in their stance. "Then we show them through our actions. We demonstrate that the shadows hold power only if we allow them to." In that instant, clarity enveloped him. The scares of his past and the identities that tried to fracture him had served as a crucible. Every confrontation had only sharpened his clarity of purpose, forcing him to navigate through his dual heritage. Driven by newfound resolve, he stepped forward, solidifying his voice. I can't change how they see us or what they believe, but I can take responsibility for who I am. It's our actions moving forward that will reshape those perceptions. By embracing his mixed heritage as a source of strength rather than a weakness, Jake began to weave a burgeoning narrative around him. The lingering distrust began to dissipate, and with every word he saw flickers of acknowledgement, challenging the notions that had long constrained them. With his strategic plan forming, Jake spotted the flickering shadows of chaos from the trees. His heart hammered not in fear but in adrenaline, igniting a determination that surged through him. We need to regroup and prepare for whatever is out there, Aho commanded, his authoritative tone cutting through the lingering uncertainty. We'll use the darkness as our ally, not our enemy. Jake nodded, impressed by Aho's adeptness at flipping the narrative, steering the group's focus toward preparation and strategy. The battleground was not solely the forest, it lay within their hearts too. As they dispersed, Jake sensed the monumental challenge ahead. He was transformed, yet he faced an internal battle as pressing as the external threats. Every decision now held the weight of legacy and identity intertwined, a responsibility to honor both aspects of himself while confronting the very essence of their adversarial shadows. Their footsteps pressed deeper into the darkening woods, echoing a silent pact among them. Jake turned to Aho, a question forming on his lips as they readied for convergence. What happens if we fail? He wondered. Doubt gnawed impatiently at the edges of his newfound confidence. With unity, we won't, Aho replied firmly, his faith steering Jake's own resolve. But unease lingered as they braced for the unknown, the question now more imminent than ever. What was lurking in the darkness, yearning to confront their evolution? The woods closed in around Jake and his team, shadows stretching like fingers. As they advanced cautiously, each step echoed with a resonance of history, of battles fought and bonds tested. Jake peered into the darkness, but it wasn't the environment that truly unnerved him. It was the weight of expectations, both his own and those of the warriors surrounding him. He realized that while he had just made a bold proclamation about unity in action, the internal wires of every individual present were still very much frayed. The wilderness felt alive, breathing in sync with his racing heart. With every rustle, every snap of a twig, doubt crept in, suggesting that perhaps the shadows were of something darker than just the forest itself. What if Jared was right? What if their fraying relationships would come undone in the moment of truth? As they found a clearing, Jake slowed his pace to survey the terrain. In silence, he watched Aho interact with the others, mentioning tactical positioning and distractions. Jake respected Aho, who exuded an air of assurance, but inside, he questioned if he could truly mirror that confidence or cultivate the same trust among them. What if I break? The thought nagged at him, a frigid whisper that sent chills cascading down his spine. This wasn't just about facing shadows, it was also about facing the parts of himself he feared would crumble under pressure. He wondered if he truly had the strength to lead. A sudden shout shattered his inner turmoil, snapping him into action. One of the team, a young woman named Alara, had spotted something in the distance. Her urgency spurred them into a huddle. Looks like there's a cave up ahead, she exclaimed, gripping her weapon with both hands. Could be a good spot for cover or a trap. Jake felt the eyes upon him. Leadership wasn't only about authority. It hinged on making definitive choices in the moment. Let's check it out, but stay alert, he instructed, channeling every ounce of resolve he had. They moved as one, tension woven tightly among the group, each member responding to the hallowed fear of what might be encroaching in the shadows ahead. The cave loomed larger as they approached, an imposing structure that seemed to beckon them both invitingly and ominously. Upon entering, a switch flip in Jake's mentality. He could feel the cool air in the cavern contrasting with the weight in his chest, and the darkness held secrets he was desperate to uncover, about the enemy they faced, and about himself. Here, shouted Aho, pointing to a cluster of rocks that could serve as a barricade. We can use this for cover. Jake knelt beside him, considering the layout. How could he instill confidence now, when his own steadiness trembled before them? If we get trapped in here... The thought sent a knot forming in his stomach again. but Aho interrupted his spiraling. What matters isn't where we are now, but where we decide to go from here. It was a simple statement, imbued with a wisdom that Jake felt sink in. Motivated by Aho's words, Jake gestured for silence and gathered the team. We need to show them we are not the weak shadows they think we are. Let's fortify this cave wisely, standing together as a single unit. We fight on our terms, and we fight as one. He glanced from face to face, gauging reactions. The flickers of agreement ignited something primal, stirring shared courage. Jared caught his eye, and this time there was no ridicule. Instead, in the heart of the darkness, there was a semblance of camaraderie beginning to emerge. Yet, in the back of his mind, Jake recalled his own fears. Questions of whether he could maintain control over what lay ahead. They were seconds away from a confrontation that would redefine each of them, expose their vulnerabilities, and bring forth either redemption or ruin. Just remember, Jake added, voice steadying, whatever darkness confronts us, we emerge through actions forged in courage. Our past shadows will guide our present, but we must not let them dictate our futures. As they prepared for what was coming, the cave trembled slightly, reminiscent of the ground beneath him earlier. The fight was no longer solely against external threats. It was also a confrontation with the history and decisions that haunted him. Waiting was the hardest part, the silence before chaos, a trembling reminder that they were all on the precipice of something monumental. And then they heard it. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, drawing ever closer. Jake's heart raced, and in that heartbeat he understood. The moment of confronting both physical and personal shadows had arrived. What would they find waiting just beyond the cave's darkness? Jake's pulse quickened as the footsteps echoed, reverberating through the cave. It wasn't just the impending confrontation that stirred within him. It was the realization that their true battle was as much against their own fears as it was against a tangible enemy. Each member of the team wore a mask of determination, but behind every eyes was a flicker of doubt that he could sense, the uncertainty of their own worthiness. "Form a line!" he barked, instinctively adopting a commanding stance. Each of his teammates shuffled into position, sharing wary glances, but beneath that discord, Jake could feel something shifting, an unspoken bond beginning to tether them together in their shared anxiety. As they prepared for the threat looming outside, Jake struggled to drown out the haunting echoes of self-doubt. Anger and fear intertwined within him, igniting a desire to confront not only the danger outside, but the parts of himself that were reluctant to step into the light. If they were to survive, he couldn't afford to falter. He had to embrace vulnerability as a sign of strength rather than a flaw. "Remember our skills," he urged, attempting to anchor the swirling tension. "Each of us brings something vital to our mission. Trust comes from recognizing our strengths." He pointed at Ilara and Aho, who had stepped closer. "Ilara has a keen eye for detail, while Aho can think quickly under pressure. Don't forget who you are." But Jake barely acknowledged his own abilities. Leadership was often about pushing one's doubts aside for the sake of others. He felt trapped in a paradox. He needed to display confidence, but his inner voice continued to question whether he could hold them together when it mattered most. The footsteps drew nearer, a foreboding rhythm that matched his racing thoughts. If the indiscriminate darkness ahead represented failure, what would it mean for him if his team faltered under his command? Would he shatter too? "Stick together and fight," he hissed under his breath, more to convince himself than the others. "We face whatever comes next as one." The shadows shifted at the cave's mouth, and Jake's instincts screamed for action. The tangible fear coiling in his gut urged him to retreat, yet an equally urgent part recognized this moment was pivotal for him. Without thinking, he stepped forward, putting himself at the forefront as he faced the encroaching figure. His heartbeat thumped in his ears, almost drowning the sound of his own voice as he called out, "Who goes there?" A dim form materialized, cloaked in the shadows that bled into the cave. Jake caught sight of their glinting eyes, and in that heartbeat, a realization struck him. Sure, he was leading the charge, but they wouldn't simply follow him into battle. They needed him to embrace vulnerability. In this moment, embracing his human frailties would forge deeper connections. Driven by this new understanding, he asked himself if they could overcome the phantoms within, just as they would the enemy. "I'm not here just to lead. "I'm here to learn from all of you too," he declared, his voice steadier and infused with newfound purpose. The figure stopped, his breathing heavy and uncertain in the face of this dynamic. Jake sensed his team watching, their doubts simmering but also shifting, perhaps resolutely, into shadows of hope. As the figure stepped fully into the light, Jake's eyes widened, recognizing someone from long before, a person entangled in complicated history. This wasn't merely an external conflict. This confrontation would force them all to reckon with their pasts. Jake now stood not just as a leader, but as an individual destined to confront both the suspicions of his team and the weight of a familiar face. This was personal, and it could either solidify or fracture them all. The tension in the air was electric, and just as the weight of their shared history bore down on him, Jake's mind raced with a single question. Had he truly fortified a foundation strong enough to hold? Or was this moment the crumbling point that would unravel everything? The figure took a step closer, ready to unveil truths that would change their course. Jake could already feel the ground beneath him shifting. The truth was poised to strike, and this time he had to stand firm, not just for the mission, but for the very pieces of himself he feared would shatter with revelation. The figure looming before Jake was unmistakably familiar. A specter from a past he had buried, its emergence igniting a whirlwind of emotions. The shadows danced around him, obscuring any clear view of intentions. But Jake was drawn not only to the figure's presence, but to the flood of emotions it invoked, a concoction of fear, nostalgia, and unresolved sentiments that churned violently in his chest. "Alex," he breathed, the name slipping through the cracks of his defenses, uncertain if the world heard it or if it echoed purely in his mind. The years since their last encounter loomed, heavy like the stale air in the cave. Jake recalled the scars of that past friendship, marked by betrayal and silence. Now confronted by Alex, all those memories crashed around him like waves against jagged rocks. "Jake," Alex replied, a cautious familiarity in his tone. "I didn't expect to see you here." Jake searched Alex's face for answers, for clarity, but met only a reflection of his own turmoil. This was not just a confrontation with a former friend. It was a collision with the remnants of choices he wished he had made differently. Successions of doubt spiraled through his thoughts. Could he afford to throw away this opportunity for resolution, for understanding? The team stirred behind him, shifting in uncertainty, making it manifest how deeply unresolved tensions spread beyond simply his fraught history. They stood on the precipice of confrontation, leaning on the promise of unity that Jake had earlier sought to invoke. Still, he felt an internal chasm widening, questioning whether he would falter under the weight of the past's burden, or if the history shared with Alex could transform into a pivotal moment of growth. "Why are you here?" Jake asked, his voice steadier than the tempest inside. "I came to see if we'd pick up where we left off," Alex said, gesturing slightly as if inviting Jake to delve back into the murky waters of their past. The cave walls echoed with memories of laughter and arguments, of secrets shared and trust broken. "But what does that mean for me now?" Jake countered, tension thrumming through his veins. The anger that had simmered beneath the surface for years threatened to boil over, yet nestled within that rage was an ember of longing for resolution. "How can I trust you after everything?" The accusation hung in the space between them, heavy with the weight of lost time. It was here that Jake caught sight of his teammates' faces, unsure but also intensely invested in his stance. If he chose to engage, he would not only navigate old scars, but also influence their beliefs in trust, vulnerability, and the capacity for reform. Silence settled, filled with unsaid words. Jake wrestled within himself, faced with the decision that would mark a radical transformation, not just for him, but for his team. He felt the need to display strength, yet the only way to do so lay in exposing vulnerabilities. To stand firm was to trust not just Alex, but also himself, accepting that to lead meant risking everything for newfound revelations. Taking a step closer, Jake prepared to confront the very essence of his history. "I'm here to learn what you have to say," he stated, a challenge intertwined with an acceptance he would never have expected to express. It was a commitment to facing the truth, regardless of the implications. In the periphery, he saw Ilara and Aho shift closer, their expressions reflective of determination and hope. Each person in the line bore their own version of struggle. Jake realized in that dawning moment, their battles were not isolated. This confrontation had the potential to shift dynamics not just amongst them, but to ignite clarities that were perhaps hidden, even to themselves. As Alex's expression flickered with an unreadable emotion, Jake felt the ground underneath him stabilize, uncharted yet invigorating. "Let's do this," Jake managed to say, his voice resolute. What lay ahead might fracture them or spur them into strength, but there was too much at stake not to risk everything. In this uncharted territory, Jake was poised for a leap beyond mere leadership. The shifts unfolding around him held the promise of growth beneath the weight of impending truths. The challenge was far from over. It was about to reach a boiling point. With Alex's next words, everything they thought they knew and who they thought they were might unravel. What revelations rested in the folds of their past, waiting to resurface and demand recognition. Jake felt the tension in the cave fraught with unspoken words and the memories that stretched beyond mere history. Alex's presence ignited a flicker of hope tempered by caution, enmeshed in layers of shared turmoil and unresolved nuances between their intertwined lives. History had crafted a chasm filled with pain, yet from this moment there lay an opportunity for both acknowledgement and transformation. "Jake, there's a lot we both need to confront," Alex began, his voice a frayed whisper against the backdrop of uncertainty. "We were on different paths, but I'm here because I know together we could avoid repeating our past mistakes." Jake's heart raced as he absorbed the sincerity in Alex's words. He could feel the weight of his own hesitations slipping ever so slightly. This was his chance to redefine not just their relationship, but the narrative that echoed through their families and communities. "What is it you think we can do?" Jake replied, trying to balance the weight of his past grievances against the flickering possibility for unity. "You need to realize there's something much larger at play here. Our legacies have been intertwined for so long, but we can shift that power dynamic starting today," Alex said with palpable conviction. Jake felt momentum stirring within him. This wasn't merely about them revisiting old scars. It was about recognition of their shared histories and shaping a new narrative that honored both of their heritages. "Unity," Jake murmured, grappling with what that might look like. "If we confront this together, we show everyone out there that division is not our only option." A surge of confidence coursed through him. His earlier fears had morphed into purpose, not just for himself, but for everyone who waited anxiously back in that cave. "Exactly. It's more than just words. It's about our shared responsibility to bridge gaps and create change." Alex's brows furrowed, conveying an urgency that resonated deeply within Jake's growing resolve. A pact formed in that cavern. Both men felt its gravity and sincerity. "Then let's do it," Jake declared more strongly, standing taller than before, embodying the essence of newfound confidence. "We can confront whatever is lurking out there, but we do it together. We're an extension of each other's histories, and it's time we both acted like it." The team, still enveloped in silent anticipation, shifted alongside him, reading the shift in energy like an undertow prompting them forward. Jake locked eyes with Aho, seeking acknowledgement, and saw the flicker of determination mirrored back. This was no longer solely about surviving the shadows. They would instead transform and foster resilience. As they braced to exit the cave, Jake felt lighter, his past unshackling its hold. This moment, birthed from conflict and potential redemption, represented a vanguard of change, not just for him and Alex, but for everyone present. Emerging into the dim light of the night, Jake stood shoulder to shoulder with Alex, Aho, and their united team at his back, an unbreakable front forging forward. He could feel empowerment thrumming in his veins, ready to confront the shadows beyond the cave. Adrenaline surged, spurring them toward a destiny intertwined with newfound clarity, a desire to deter the violence that had historically separated their worlds. The encroaching figures from the tree line grew nearer, yet a fire ignited in Jake's chest, a resolve emerging from ashes of doubt. As the first voice called out, "This is a fight we're ready for," Jake knew he had transformed from the uncertain man of yesterday into a collaborative force committed to reshaping the future. With every bold step forward, he felt the strength of unity envelop him, a powerful reminder that acknowledging vulnerability often catalyzed the most formidable connections. Jake turned back for the briefest moment, locking eyes with Aho and Alex, sharing a silent promise. They would not let history dictate their futures. In that moment, Jake understood the profound power within himself to lead, not solely as an individual, but as part of a collective evolution promising to bridge unspoken divisions. The shadows that had once loomed overhead now felt surmountable, for they were no longer simply shadows. They comprised the fabric of shared histories that had the singular opportunity to evolve. This was a defining moment, one where Jake would not only achieve individual growth, but would emerge as evidence that transformation could come from confronting legacies forged in conflict. The courage rising from his core felt unstoppable. This was his evolution, the moment where personal achievement became synonymous with collective resistance. And with every heartbeat, every resolute stride, he vowed to embrace the entirety of who he was and lead them toward a narrative not dictated by fear, but forged in unity, hope, and the undeniable strength of shared triumph. Subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire you to overcome adversity. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, because your engagement makes all the difference. Comment your thoughts and interpretations about this transformative ending. Let's discuss the journey together. And remember, share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful resolution. Don't wait even one more second to spread the message of transformation and unity.